There's a Cherokee Native American proverb that says, "Do not judge a man until you've walked a mile in his moccasins." Take a look at this photo. Not quite moccasins, it must be said. But what kind of person would wear these purple wellies? Adult or child? Male or female? What would the person do in them? Puddle jump? Or perhaps milk cows? What would the wellies feel like to wear? That process of imagining what it would be like to be in someone else's shoes helps us to understand one another's actions and emotional responses, to empathise with each other. We might not always agree with the actions, ideas or principles of others. We may not sympathise with them. But if we have some insight into how they came to be where they are in life, we're much less likely to be judgmental. Through Jesus, God chose to walk in our shoes for a whole lifetime. He knows and fully understands what it is to be human because he's experienced it firsthand. We can see this clearly in the accounts we have of his encounters with those marginalised or excluded from the Jewish society in which Jesus lived. Let's consider St. John's story of the Samaritan woman at the well, whom, flying in the face of Jewish tradition, Jesus asks for a cold drink of water on a baking hot day. The fact that the woman was doing the back-breaking job of drawing water in the heat of the midday sun immediately suggests that she was a social outcast, or she would have done her water collecting with everyone else in the relative cool of dawn or dusk. Jesus takes the time to speak to the woman, and through their conversation it becomes apparent that Jesus knows all about her position, that she'd been unfortunate enough to be widowed 5 times and was now dependent on a man who was not her husband. It may be that she was considered cursed because of her marital history, and that's why she was ostracised. We can't know for certain. We do know that when the woman rushes back to the village, abandoning her water jar in her haste to tell everyone about her meeting with Jesus, it is apparent that it was Jesus' empathy for her, his understanding of her circumstances, that most struck her and opened her mind to the possibility that he could be the longed-for Christ. Listen to her words. "Come, see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah?" The situation of Zacchaeus, the rich chief collector of taxes, whom St. Luke tells us about, appears superficially very different to that of the Samaritan woman. In contrast to Zacchaeus, she was reliant on the men around her, with little or no control over her own fate. Zacchaeus was a wealthy and powerful man, but he was hated by his fellow Jews for the job he did, and most likely despised by the Romans who employed him, making him a social outcast too. In Zacchaeus' case, he rather than Jesus made the first move, but Jesus responds with empathy, assuring him that Jesus wants to see him as much as he wants to see Jesus. And the wonderful thing is that, having welcomed Jesus, Zacchaeus immediately mends his ways, promising, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half my possessions to the poor, and if I've cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." It is when this empathy fails that humans become able to do dreadful things to others. This is a photo of the haunting Shoes Memorial in Budapest, commemorating the thousands of Hungarian Jewish men, women and children executed by the fascist Arrow Cross militia in the winter of 1944 to 45. Whole families were lined upon the banks of the Danube, instructed to remove their shoes before they were shot and their bodies pushed into the river. The way that we can ensure that such horrors cease is to follow Jesus' example and show his empathy, helping his love, compassion and acceptance shape our society, making it less judgmental, kinder and more inclusive. So whose shoes might you imagine walking in today? A Syrian asylum seeker with shoes full of sand from a remote French beach, now tossing around in an inadequate inflatable boat in one of the busiest shipping channels in the world, having given all the money you possessed to a gang of ruthless criminal people traffickers in exchange for even the faintest chance of a better, safer life? Or perhaps a single parent whose universal credit payments have been stopped because you missed a job centre appointment as one of your children was suddenly ill, but you didn't have any credit on your phone to call and let the job centre know? And what about those purple wellies? The purple wellies are mine, and I use them for going on muddy dog walks with Archie here. Purple's one of my favourite colours, mostly because of the poem by Jenny Joseph that begins, "When I am old, I shall wear purple." Having had cancer twice before the age of 50, growing old's a real privilege, living long enough to see my grandson grow up. And as for how it feels to walk in these wellies, if I'm perfectly honest, not very comfortable. They rub my ankles unless I wear just exactly the right pair of socks.